And we're live. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with a couple of nerds today. We have Jeff Mack and Nerdarchist Ted here, and we were going to be talking about the con life. I think there might be some steampunk going on, judging by the headwear. Uh, but we're really fortunate, very lucky to have Jeff on today. This should be a lot of fun. If you guys have questions about conventions, this is probably the guy to ask. So with that, how long have you been running cons? And I guess we'll start off right off from the bat. You can pimp the cons that you are running, and also, guys, remember, as always, in the description you can find links to all those things.
I started doing conventions, festivals, events when I was in college, actually, through the Rutgers Rocky Horror Picture Show Club, and been doing it almost consistently ever since, with a brief stop for a few years of work in corporate marketing. And I went full-time with events, 8 years ago, I believe, and now events are pretty much all that I do. And we actually tend to think of most of what we do as festivals more than conventions. And I don't mind being lumped into the con category because con is such a large, broad idea. But if you look at something like the Steampunk World's Fair versus what used to be an old school steampunk convention, they're completely different entities. We kind of have a general philosophy of overwhelming people with the experience in terms of just more entertainment, more shows, more going on than you'd usually see anywhere. And let's see, you sure you want the list of the shows that I do? Because I'm not sure how much time we have, and it's kind of a list.
You can do the abridged version if you want, or your favorites. Pick your favorite children.
Pick my favorite children. Let's see. Well, I think I can actually do it super quick. I can do it in terms of what's coming up, which is starting with our smallest, the Intimate Steampunk in the Catskills, a steampunk vacation coming up in June, and then we've got the Geeky Kink event New England, and that's in August, and the Geeky Kink event Classic, which is the world's greatest place to be a geeky kinkster. And then we've got Halloween in the Catskills, 2 weekends, same place, Blackthorn Resort in upstate New York. Then we run into Dark Side of the Con, the only goth convention in the United States as far as we can tell. We're really hoping Convergence is still around, but no one's been able to find it, unfortunately, so I think we're the last ones. Then Glimmerdark, our Misfit Fairy Festival, which is a multi-genre event. And finally, the Steampunk World's Fair, which is the world's largest steampunk event, the world's largest steampunk music event, and the world's largest steampunk set of eclectic madnesses that you will find anywhere in the known universe.
I was going to ask that. I had heard that the Steampunk World's Fair was the biggest gathering, and I'm glad you confirmed that for me.
It is the biggest ticketed gathering. There are some unticketed events, like say the Grand Steampunk Exposition in Canada, which may get more people coming into the event, but it's hard to tell because as an unticketed event, you don't count as easily. You don't have as good a way of keeping track, and it's also it's a different world. It's not a worse world, but an unticketed steampunk event will tend to get a ton of curious members of the general public, some of whom are there to participate, some are there to sort of see the freaks. And a ticketed steampunk event, for better or for worse, will get a concentration of people who are interested in steampunk. And so they're not just different worlds in terms of what they might be doing financially or how they're being put on, but they're also very different worlds in terms of the people who come out. It's like if you work in Renaissance fairs, you know that big Renaissance fairs, hard site Renaissance fairs, the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair, the New York Renaissance Fair, California Renaissance Fair, make their money on general public patrons. And some of the people are kind of into it. Some of the patrons are not that into it at all. They just want something to do with their kids. But the lifeblood is this small community of hardcore Renaissance Fair lovers who keep Ren fairs alive and build the core and build the art and talk about it and clean up the place and volunteer. They make the Ren fairs happen, but they don't have enough numbers to actually sustain a Renaissance fair that's 12 acres large and has lots of indoor parts.
So, kind of like backtracking here a little bit. What's the difference between a festival and a con? Enlighten me, sir.
And of course, there's not necessarily any specific difference. I mean, people can use whatever terms they want. But for me, I tend to think of conventions as being discussion-based, and I think that's fantastic. And I tend to think of festivals as being entertainment and performance-based. I've seen great entertainment at conventions. FairyCon is known for its great entertainment, its great balls. DragonCon certainly has fantastic entertainment. But in general, when I got started in steampunk, steampunk went to kind of on a literary science fiction model, which was mostly panels. And we felt that we wanted to incorporate everything. So we wanted to have panels and bands and shows and performances and entertainers and art and dancing. And it's really an entirely different feel, an entirely different idea. I worry a little that I'm talking too much because these are subjects I can talk a lot about. But just as a quick thought, festivals are becoming really big in mainstream culture right now. And if you look at something like the expectations of a Coachella or the destructive idea of something like a Fire Festival, or something smaller like a Governor's Island Festival, if you look at that, that's really the model that we work on. We work on this humongous, massive amount of entertainment happening that you can participate in, that you're a part of, that's organic, where you will run into the people who are performing, and less on a convention model, less on a model of, okay, most of my event will be spent sitting down watching people talk. There's nothing wrong with watching people talk. I hope people are doing that with this show right now. But it's a really different world.
Interesting. I never really thought about it that way. And I guess of me and Ted, obviously, I've been to way less conventions and cons this year. This year, I'll probably go to more cons than I've gone, my whole life practically. But because I'm planning on going to Origins and Gen Con, and there might be some other things that are popping up, and so I'm very curious about this and the con life. And even in the chat, Scott's like, panels are my jam, where listening, you talk what you feel the difference is one is more entertainment based and one is more discussion based, which both of them can kind of be entertainment, but I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not like there's a thick line that says at this much entertainment you're a festival or anything like that. But yeah, definitely there is a difference between something whose primary focus is going to be a lot of listening, and then your level of interactivity might be gaming, versus something where you might be doing almost anything. Like, again, not to give the Steampunk World's Fair as an example, I love PhilCon, oldest sci-fi convention in America. I was privileged to be a guest of honor there once. It was a wonderful event. I went, and there were a lot of panels. There was a lot of discussion. There were some dinners. There was a small dance. Not to denigrate the dance. There's a vendor room. That's cool. That's really fun. It's really enjoyable. There's nothing wrong with that. But I knew pretty much from the start what my range of experiences was going to be, even if I didn't know exactly what the convention experience was going to be like. At the Steampunk World's Fair, at any one given time, you could be in a DJ dance party, you could be watching a band, you could be watching someone make some sort of costume, you could be at a costume contest, you could be following a marching band through the event, you could be learning Bartitsu, the martial art of Sherlock Holmes, you could be in a boffer fight, you could be doing all of these things are happening all at the same time. That's just one given instant in the 72 hours which make up the Steampunk World's Fair.
And other things besides, as I can, assuredly attest.
Oh, yes.
So what did it take to build up to that? Like, that's probably not where you started.
I started with a concept that wasn't very dissimilar, really. I mean, I did come from the Rocky Horror universe, and I came from a universe of looking for interactivity and looking to see how you could make an event where everyone was, to the extent that they wanted, participating, where the entertainment was not you come and you have a passive experience. If you want to have a passive experience, you want to be quiet in a corner, you can be. There are certainly plenty of people who are introverted and do that. But honestly, all of my experiences, all the things that I started with, kink events, circuses, again, Rocky Horror, it all inspired me to say that what we really love is a chance to, well, I'm going to put it simply. We got started with the idea that you could have so much going on that a person never had a moment where they said, there's nothing happening, or this is boring. And I got started with these smaller events about cult movies. And actually, we were talking about this a little bit before, the idea of selling a message and people understanding what you're trying to do. When I got started, 15 years ago, trying events with my own money for real, I did this thing called Jeff Mack's Cult Movie Overnight. And the idea was that all manner of weird people like cult movies, so it's something that would bring weird people together. And the problem was that weird people often like cult movies, but most people don't like them enough that they'd want to go to an entire event based around them. No matter how much I said, oh, it's like the spirit of cult movies, but it's all the things they embody, that message didn't get through. I don't blame people for that. And then in, oh God, I guess it must be 2006, we said, why don't we do a weird Renaissance fair which has no boundaries, a Renaissance fair which doesn't have to abide by the rules of standard Renaissance fairs. Our biggest event up till that point had 2,200 people, and the first Wicked Winter Renaissance Fair had 2,200 people. So that was kind of how we burst onto the scene. And we've been running ever since.
So now the Steampunk World's Fair, it's typically in May. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it spans over the course of 2 hotels in the parking lots, and typically sells out 4 hotels.
That is correct.
So what would you say the average attendance is of that?
Average is around 7,000 and growing. We were at about 7,500 this year.
And having been to it, since 2011, it's one of my favorite conventions to go to, because, as you said, there is so much to do. I've enjoyed meeting people, not only just fans of Nerdarchy that happen to go there because I'm going, but as well as like just random people that are going to be at the convention that you already know. Like there's the safe zone of, well, these are fellow nerds and geeks and whatever have you, but given the amount of space, it's never really felt crowded, given how many people you say are there. I actually find that number really, really surprising. Now, like I said, I've been going, and I've never felt like, oh man, there's just way too many people around. Why can't I see this, or why can't I get to that? So that's actually really cool.
It's almost 250,000 square feet, and there's stuff going on all over the place. And I just interrupted you. I'm going to sit back.
I was actually done.
That's quite all right. No, that actually speaks to what Ted was saying to yesterday's guest. Yesterday's guest was Wayward Leather, and he met her, I'm pretty sure, at Steampunk.
Yes.
So yeah, so there's definitely lots of cool people to meet there, and that's why I definitely want to start getting out to more cons, and hanging out more with the fans, and just getting more of the experience. To be honest, like before we started doing Nerdarchy, I was kind of like a closet nerd. Like the first rule about playing D&D for us growing up was we don't talk about D&D. We talk in code for everything.
And we've all seen, any nerd of a certain age, any nerd probably over the age of 30, 35, has seen the essentially seismic shift in our culture away from the idea that geek culture was something to be shunned, to the idea that geek culture is something that can enthrall millions of people and still remain strong, still remain a living, vibrant, growing culture. In fact, I mean, this show, Nerdarchy, is an example of how when more people are interested in geekery, it didn't destroy geekery. It let geekery open up so many new channels for what it could do. Not unlike Steampunk, which is, of course, a kind of geekery in and of itself, where, for lots of reasons, that I could talk about that at way too much length, but Steampunk has been, for example, found by the mainstream many, many times. People kept thinking, well, this is the end of Steampunk, and Steampunk has only grown and become more creative.
We just started up a a gameplay that we do every Friday that we decided we were going to do a new game, and it's sponsored by Open Legend, which is a very open-ended system. You can kind of play anything in it. So we decided to kick it to our patrons and let them decide what we were going to play. So like Steampunk was actually the top pick, and fantasy and horror came in second, followed by like spy and espionage. So I'm like, all right, how about we just stick these all together? So we're now, running a game on Fridays called Other Skies that is loosely based off of steampunk. A little more, I guess, arcana punk.
Where would I find more details on this?
On Nerdarchy, there's a playlist for Other Skies. Open Legend is actually a free game system that's on the website. You can just go to Open Legend RPG and check out the system for free. And also, I believe Dawnforge Cast also ran a pure steampunk game over there called, I want to say Eggaroth's Skies or something like that.
Huh. That's really cool.
But it just feels like if you're going to do something with steampunk, you definitely want ships, and they should be flying.
That's one of the interesting things about steampunk, that steampunk has these strongly established genre tropes which don't hurt the genre. We're not tired of seeing airships. And that's actually part of one of my personal theories about steampunk, that I like to think that steampunk branched partly from the geek community, but also branched partly from the goth community. And that there are too many elements that are similar for it to be a coincidence. I mean, the Gothic love of the Victorian and the Edwardian, a lot of the styles of dress, top hats. You can see some goggles in some early Goth culture, actually some mid-Goth culture. But one of the things that I find most fascinating is the thought that one of the challenges Goth ran into, especially I saw in the 90s, was the worry of, is this real Goth? Is this Goth enough? And I think that's because the idea of Goth, to some extent, involved creating one world where you tried to create a similar spirit and a similar feeling in everyone who was participating at a Goth event. I don't mean everyone was trying to be the same. I just mean you were trying to generate a very specific set of feelings and a very specific atmosphere, and you were all trying to create that one atmosphere, and it was this one massive group project to build this one edifice. And steampunk is this gigantic open world, and everyone's steampunk exists all simultaneously. People whose steampunk is extremely dark and extremely scary and or vicious and or dystopian exist at the same time as people whose steampunk is effectively a utopian world. And they both can hang out next to each other and interact and perform together and talk together, and that doesn't harm anyone's steampunk. It's this massive open world. You just know, okay, over there is the steampunk world ruled by Jack the Ripper, and over there is the steampunk world ruled by Girl Genius, and over there is the steampunk world made entirely out of rainbows and exploding darts. Anything can happen, and that's one of the great wonders of what we do. It's one of the things I love so much about steampunk.
So real quick, round robin, I just want to go with like how each of us kind of like came to enjoy steampunk. For me, I actually I got bored of reading fantasy. I was like, I've been reading fantasy for 20, 30 years now. I need something a little bit different. So I discovered Mark Hoder, and he does Spring Hill Jack was the first novel, and it is Burton and Swinburne are the characters, and that series is kind of what hooked me into steampunk. And it starts off with very really light elements of it, and as it goes on, they just introduce more and more and more.
I have those books I was looking for.
They're definitely great books. I recommend them for anybody who's interested in picking up steampunk. And I guess one of the things I really liked about them too was the fact that it's based off of real world history, and then they just start twisting it and twisting it and twisting it as you read it. So seeing real historical figures, and the main characters are historical figures, was really cool as well. So how did you get into steampunk?
Which you? There are two of us.
Whoever wants to jump, you're the guest. Go first.
I first saw steampunk at SalonCon, which was created by Deborah Castellano, the Dowager Queen of Steampunk, who is still with us these days and still producing great things. She just came out with a book, in fact. I need to remember the name of Deb's book. I might do that while someone else is talking. But I was at this event put on by my friend, and it was sort of Victorian themed. And I saw all these people who had this weird stuff that was clearly not exactly Victorian, who had these goggles and these mechanical arms and these unusual pieces and this sense of whimsy, really. And I said, what in the world is that? And someone said, that is steampunk. And I said, how does this even exist? I really couldn't believe that that people would bring that level of ridiculousness and surrealism out of their imaginations and actually start playing with it in real space. And I fell in love in that very moment.
You just look at it and go, why do we have to have this reality? Why can't we have that one?
Yeah, exactly. I actually do. And that's a real question. I mean, but I should not talk about the nature of reality, especially when someone else still has yet to go.
All right. So for me, I really don't recollect much about steampunk before my wife's dance troupe decided that, was given the honor of dancing at the Steampunk World's Fair in 2011. And because it falls in May, my anniversary falls in May, my wife was like, hey, do you want to come to this convention with me and explore and see what this is all about? And so I did a little bit of research, and I don't recall knowing what steampunk was before that. I just can't remember. But that's the biggest thing. And then going and seeing, all the levels of, hey, I'm just an attendee trying to figure out what this is, versus those who spend, countless hours hand making all these different costumey stuff that look fantastic, and everywhere in between. So it's like I've been, slowly learning more, reading books, building my own, costume accessories to be more in that latter end of awesome costuming.
First, I'm going to say, well, if your first exposure was, or your first main exposure was the Steampunk World's Fair, victory! But also, in my own opinion, there is never such a thing as just an attendee. There is never such a thing as just an attendee, any more than there's such a thing as just the blood that flows in your veins. Attendees, whether they're massive steampunk veterans or people who are just walking into a show, and this goes actually for any genre, anyone who attends an event with an open mind and a desire to learn or enjoy, anyone who does that is making that event possible. And you could be attending an event for, say, science fiction writing, and you could be attending an event with, I don't know, Neil Gaiman and Ursula Le Guin and the slightly grumpy ghost of Terry Pratchett. And if you're just an attendee going to just watch them talk, if you're just an attendee, you're making that convention possible. You're making that event possible. You are not someone who is on a different plane of existence than Neil Gaiman in that world. You're critical to making that happen.
Well, I didn't mean to say that, someone was, attending out of costume was less of a guest or less of a, less of a contribution to it. I just meant from the visual perspective of, you've got people, in standard dress clothes or standard street clothes, all the way up to, every possible iteration of what, was previously mentioned of, this is what steampunk, means to me. And, you've got, there's the tree guy that was walking around being, 10 feet tall with, we're basically walking around on all fours. You've got, in ages past, I've seen, the steampunk adventures. I've seen, giant mech suits. There was literally a guy riding around in a miniature Slave One ship this year. All the way up to, the people who are totally just getting into the Victorian dress era of stuff. So like it goes in so many different directions. And that's what I was talking about, just the visual impact of what people are looking like and whatnot.
And I definitely wasn't intending to jump on you by any means or criticize, but I'm actually going to compliment. I'm going to say this says something pretty great about you, and it says something pretty great about our scene, that in a world where you can be blown away visually by the costuming, by the clothing, by what people wear, by what people create, in a world where that happens, in a world where you can look at someone and say, okay, this person is an ent, they're a living ent, they're a 10-foot tall ent, and this person, Dave Lee, has made a mechanized slave one that you can actually hang out in a world where that can happen. If you see someone who says, and that's a person who is wearing regular clothes and a top hat that they got at Spencer's, you can say, and that person is equally welcome. That's actually, I think, a huge advance in nerd culture. I think that's a huge advance in a culture which used to have some kinds of very negative exclusivity and still has some culture of exclusion. I think that's a really huge thing.
Well, as you guys were talking about earlier about, back in the day that, those who were nerds tended to, be in the closet and this and that. I have always held my nerd banner and wore it proudly. Even when I was in elementary school, I was heavily involved in Cub Scouts and then later Boy Scouts. And during Scout Appreciation Day, it was like, oh, wear your uniform to school. I was that guy. I was the guy who, would frequently talk about at the lunch table in high school, the latest D&D game that was going on. There was no misconception about how much of a nerd Ted was.
We know, Ted.
So like, it was kind of, it's cool to see how open and accepting, that kind of stuff has now become.
I used to rather my coworkers think I was going to spend the weekend snorting blow off a hooker's ass than rolling funny shaped dice. Anything but, pretty much. But now it's all good, and now I guess it's a little hard to hide it now. Videos for Steampunk World Fair upload to YouTube gain traction. I was totally curious when Ted first mentioned going. I know you definitely do some media. Like I think I've seen you do live streams on YouTube, not YouTube, on Facebook.
I do, yes.
From the actual event. What is the best way for people to follow you? And like you mentioned a bunch of stuff that I wasn't even aware of. And I did some light stalking and I found a bunch of stuff. I'm like, I guess I didn't stalk him enough.
I think part of the challenge is that if you're looking to stalk the things that I do, I don't want to brag, but if you want to look at anything that I'm involved in, or there's just so much there to look at. If you want to Google Jeff Mack Steampunk, you will see so much happening that you might not even think to Google Jeff Mack kink events, for example.
Isn't everything just on jeffmackevents.com?
I mean, yes, definitely. If people want to go to jeffmackevents.com, that is the best place to find it. That's Jeff Mack, M-A-C-H, events.com.
Okay, I will actually add that to the description.
Thank you.
My bad. Well, no. I try and get everything in there, and I looked at your what you had in the email, so I was like, so I figured that was kind of like the stuff.
And those are the core things, and it's kind of a challenge for me. It's about the message. It's how many people know that this thing that they like is done by Jeff Mack. I don't know that necessarily 5 years ago everyone who went to Wicked Fair knew that the Wicked Fair was a Jeff Mack event, or that the Steampunk World's Fair was being organized by Jeff Mack. And it took me a while to decide that I felt safe owning all of those things, that I felt safe saying, yes, this is a Jeff Mack event. Again, I look a lot into promoter fails and event organizer fails, and I study them all the time. And hubris, arrogance, thinking that you're better than other people are really common problems for event organizers. And the decision to start saying, I am Jeff Mack, I do these events, let me tell you all about them, was kind of a hard one. When I was younger and struggling, and no one had heard of anything I did, I would go up to anyone at the Renaissance Fair and say, hey, let me tell you about stuff that I do. And now I don't feel I felt that was okay because I was basically starving, you know? But I feel like that would not be okay now. Because if every person did that, it would be bad for the ecology of the event. You'd just be surrounded by people promoting their stuff to you and not be able to do your own thing. So the long answer to the question you did not quite ask was, I'm now starting to try to make people aware of Jeff Mack events, but it's challenging. And sometimes people are mostly falling into that by seeing other things. Like they go to the Steampunk World's Fair and that they then see that there's something called Glimmerdark, and they might check that out. Or people who know me from FetLife know about the Geeky Kink event, and they might then find out that I also do the Steampunk World's Fair. I don't know exactly how to bring everyone together. It's been a struggle, honestly.
So I've just updated the description. You guys can find that so you can follow everything. And real quick, speaking to some of the stuff we've been talking about, Comic Book University, Professor Bill, he's got a comment. Yes, Dave, Ted was the guy had to tell people to leave him alone. Meanwhile, admiring how brave he was to let his nerd flag fly. And Professor Bill, to me, he's like this big, but apparently he's kind of like a mountain of a man. He's like 6'5". So I imagine when in high school, when he was telling people to leave that guy alone, they left that guy alone.
So, Jeff, besides the events that you yourself run, do you go to other cons and festivals?
I certainly do when I can, but a lot of my life is really just trying to get all the things that I do up to the standards that I want out of them. And that's really difficult. And I find myself taking on a lot of new projects because I really like them, or I get really interested in them, or I think there's something really rich in them. And going to a convention or an event it's really hard for me. So I honestly mostly go to events where I'm going to be some kind of guest. Honestly, running an event company, at least the way we do it, is a 100-hour-a-week job for me. If I take a weekend or even a day to go to a convention or a show or an event, I need to find extra time in the week to make up for that time. So I'll admit that's been a challenge. I'm trying to figure out how to get to the New Jersey Renaissance Fair. It's 3 weekends long. I really want to go at least once, and I'm still trying to figure out if I can find half a day to make it down there. And that's only about an hour away from me.
Jeff,
Wow.
100-hour work week. I mean, there's 168 hours in the week. You have 68 hours to do whatever you want with. So, Scott, staff writer Scott has a question for you. See, most of the cons I go to shift to video game culture slowly or quickly. Like video game culture is a whirlpool that swirls up all other cultures at cons. Have you had to deal with this?
I have not in any way, shape, or form. And I think part of it is also to go back to, we're not exactly a con. And video game culture is awesome, and video game culture is really big, and a lot of people enjoy it. And there's certainly money in video game culture, and I'm not saying that people do it just for the money. But one of the things I have seen and heard about with video games and video gaming taking over parts of events is that a lot of people want to go to events and play video games. And sometimes playing video games is going to be one of the most exciting interactive things you have happening at an event. And I will just say that I'm going to put it simply, and it's forgive the arrogance. At a Jeff Mack event, video gaming is going to be one of the least interactive, least exciting things you can do, and I'm going to say that as a person who loves the hell out of video games. It's going to be one of the least active things that's going to happen at that event. So it's a lot harder to get sucked into it. I mean, if we had a game room for video gaming at the Steampunk World's Fair, I think the game room would get abandoned the minute the stationary marching band marched through with 15 people playing instruments and 100 people trailing behind them dancing.
Excellent point. I also feel like the kind of events you're running don't really lend themselves to that to that genre quite as much either. That medium, which is good. I mean,
I'm certain that there are loads of people who go to the Steampunk World's Fair that are into video games as well.
Absolutely.
I just there's nothing about that event that makes me feel that is lacking something like that. And there's plenty of things to do. Whether you want to do live entertainment, learn something. Sorry, live entertainment is just loosely broad. If you want to watch a band, if you want to watch someone dance, you want to go to a comedy show. And there's been just about every type of thing out there for entertainment.
That's part of our goal. And I'm going to just go back to the original comparison I made. And I'm going to use two events that are much larger than my events. But I can see people going to Dragon Con and spending the entire weekend video gaming. Can you see people going to Coachella and spending the entire weekend video gaming? Because I can't.
So I guess what Scott's talking about, and I guess this has less to do with the convention goers and more with the promoters, and he's talking about the money. So that was all code for, like, as money tried to infiltrate your cons. Do you get approached by video game companies trying to get into those events and stuff like that?
I mean, I'll also be honest and say we certainly haven't really had that kind of approach. And I don't know that there's a really major steampunk game out there that sees steampunk as There are certainly some great steampunk games out there, but I don't think most of those games see their primary audience as, I'm going to reach steampunks and they're going to love this, or I'm going to have trouble reaching steampunks. I'm going to need to go through conventions or events to reach steampunks. I think those games already start out with a vast mass market through just being games and being put out by major game companies, and that market itself still dwarfs the steampunk market, I think. It's not like your World of Warcraft setting up at New York Comic Con where you're going to reach tens of thousands of people at once. What would World of Warcraft say? If World of Warcraft did a steampunk World of Warcraft, would they necessarily think as the first part of their marketing, what we need to do? We need to reach 7,000 people at once? And the answer is probably not.
So there you go, Scott. So Daniel S., anybody listen to the music? And if so, what is your favorite band? And actually, staff writer Megan actually chimed in with Professor Elemental and Steam Powered Giraffe.
Those are both great performers, and we've of course had both of them at the Steampunk World's Fair. Gosh, steampunk music, there's such a gigantic list. I'm going to cheat real quick. I'm going to pull up some of my favorite performers by going to the Steampunk World's Fair website and picking a couple of my favorites. And if you want to chime in while I'm doing this, but man, there are so many.
Nerdarchy Ted is having some technical difficulties as he keeps.
I keep freezing up. I've been kind of frozen at least twice, and I'm like, well, what can I do here?
I keep hitting you with a freeze ray. I admit it.
So I'm fine. It's you guys that keep freezing, and when you guys are talking, I'm like, crap, what do I do here?
Hey, so Ted, what is your favorite steampunk band?
Oh, geez. I have only been exposed to a handful, through the World's Fair.
You've got me beat. So you're now the foremost authority on steampunk music in Nerdarchy.
Well, yes, I would be hard pressed to actually remember the the few bands that I've actually gone and watched. So I don't know. I wouldn't want to single any of them out.
So BioShock is coming up in the chat. Megan's actually supplied a bunch of them, and now she's decided that today will be a steampunk music day in her house.
Yes, well, I could recommend a bunch of my favorite steampunk music.
The Clockwork Dolls is also one she mentioned.
Dolls are awesome. Cog is Dead. I'm going to say that one of my favorite steampunk musicians is singer-songwriter who creates these incredible, interesting worlds of storytelling within his work, and who actually wrote the first steampunk rock opera, Jeff Mack. Man was a freaking genius. I could listen to that guy all day. I hear he's really busy, and there aren't a lot of really good recordings of him. Some of my favorite bands in steampunk are certainly going to be Emperor Norton's Stationary Marching Band, which is part band, part experience, much like Steam Powered Giraffe. And if they don't get you dancing, very few things will. I really love Frenchie and the Punk, who are the dynamic duo of steampunk and the greatest cabaret performers in all of steampunk. And they've got this fantastic singing and songwriting. And Scott is one of the best guitarists I have ever heard. I would put Scott up on the level of a Brian May. I'd put him up on the level of a Slash. And he performs in the steampunk genre. It's really incredible. To list a current favorite, some folks who are new on the scene, people should absolutely look up Victor and the Bully. Victor and the Bully are possibly the most exciting new steampunk performers I have ever heard. They are from the United Kingdom. They're absolutely brilliant. There's just the two of them, but their music is eminently danceable. Their songs are catchy, sharp, witty, dark, fascinating, and they do an incredible stage show. And then if you listen to their lyrics, they're one of those bands where you really want to hear everything they're singing about. They're singing about such interesting ideas and such interesting things happening, but they're also singing and performing in such a catchy way that you really want to move your body while you're listening. I'd say Victor and the Bully would probably be my favorite new band, my favorite steampunk discovery from this past World's Fair.
Well, you know what? I think you've sold me. I'm going to drag my wife to Steampunk this next year, for sure. And you mentioned some other events I might check out as well, which is really cool. I'm going to start off our some point. So you guys let us know where you're watching from today. Actually, staff writer Doug has been absent. He's usually at all the live chats. Hopefully.
Now you guys are actually starting to freeze up a little for me. I don't know if you can hear this.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, seems to have gone away. So I'll just cross my fingers.
Yeah, it might just be. It just might be Google today being crappy. Happens sometimes.
Happens.
So we got Swiss. Swiss? I don't know if that's part of something else. Washington State. We have Budapest. I saw that earlier. Ohio, the butt crack of Ohio, of course. So I can't even say that. Comic Book University. It's like one of the. It's one of the 9 realms. Yeah, I think that's it said. The Sweaty Pit of California. We got Suburbia, Maryland. We've got Boston. We got Washington State. We got Seattle, Jacksonville, Indiana. We got Arkansas. We got PA in the house. Doug is here. We have Atlanta, Norway, South Georgia, Cleveland. And Ted's hat is gone. Yes, Ted's hat is gone. Maybe that's what was interfering with the internet today. It was Ted's hat. I will blame Ted's hat.
Darn it, Ted's hat.
Oh, we had another Sweden as well. I don't know if I said Sweden already or not. But if not, we definitely have Sweden. It's very important to me that somebody in Sweden is watching our live chats at all times.
I think that's basically the critical point to any live chat, that someone from Sweden be watching.
Yeah, that's the conclusion I came to. Now at this point, they might even just make it up to make me feel better, but that's fine. I appreciate it. We got Fort Worth, Texas. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us from all over the place. It's really cool. And it's also really cool, Jeff, for you to come on here and share your passion and you just got a really freaking cool job too.
Thank you. I really love my job. It's which is good because it's most of what I do with my life.
Awesome. Yeah. So, hey, maybe Nerdarchy can come do a steampunk talk. With by then we'll have been playing a steampunk RPG for a while. Well, it's not actually an RPG, but we're playing it as steampunk anyway.
You should drop us a line. We'll talk to Genevieve, our artistic director, the genius who makes the shows so brilliant. On the subject of gaming, as a quick side note, while of course I'd like to keep promoting my events and hey, everyone in the world should go to the Steampunk World's Fair, and every goth person should go to Dark Side of the Con. And definitely, if you're in the northeastern United States and you'd like an inexpensive, intimate steampunk vacation, you need to check out Steampunk in the Catskills, which is 2 nights, 5 meals, the entire event, the whole festival, all the shows, all the performances, the vendors, for $150, which is just out of this world. But
that is a really good deal.
It is a really good deal, especially for this part of the country. That's a really good deal.
That's that. What's that include again?
That is 5 gourmet meals cooked by the resort, 2 nights stay at the resort, and the entire festival.
So, and $150 a person? Damn.
$150 a person, yeah.
When is that? I think I'm going to drag my wife to that.
It's soon, so I don't know if you got time, but it's June 9th through 11th. And if you can't make it then, you could make it to Halloween in the Catskills, which is coming up in October, 2 weekends. The Blackthorn Resort is a family-owned, family-run resort. It's a small family of folks who used to own a horse farm, actually, and some 20 years ago. And they bought out a resort. After the Catskills used to be a playground for very rich folks, and when that sort of stopped happening, a lot of the resorts fell into disrepair, and the family bought out the resort, and they've been physically rebuilding it with their own hands, and they've been physically doing the cooking, and they've been making the rooms work, and they've been booking the festivals, and because they do it all themselves, they're able to do it really cheaply, and because they do it with love, they're able to make something that's really fantastic. So I really love doing that show. That show is my equivalent of a vacation. That is kind of what I do. That is my time off that weekend. I only have to run something like 40 hours of entertainment in a weekend. It's not that bad. But it's incredible stuff, and we've got great performers like the Eternal Frontier, who are pictured in the photo for this live stream.
Your events now, some of the ones that are a little more adult themed.
We do the Geeky Kink event, the world's greatest kink event for nerds. Yes, we were the first kink event to have a ball pit. We have a whole bunch of programming devoted specifically to being geeky and kinky, and of course, we also have a lot of great regular kink content from beginners to highly advanced stuff. We have a wonderful dungeon. We have great vendors, and of course, one of the things that makes a kink event, like any event, work is the people, and we get this fantastic crowd of geeky, kinky people who share the same kinky interests and who share the same geeky interests, or at least are kindred spirits about both things, and that's what really makes the event come together.
Well, I figured now is like the perfect time to talk about this stuff because Ted has been booted, and I'm married to his sister. So,
yeah. I was going to slip in a quick gaming note, actually, that I am running a game for people who play Storium. I'm running a game called Dark Side of the Con. We're just about to start the game. We're just accepting the last few characters. So if you play Storium, which is a sort of online system for gamified storytelling, you might call it. Mm-hmm. If you play Storium, look up Dark Side of the Con. It is a surreal adventure based on the actual Dark Side of the Con, and you are the convention team, and that is a convention. That in that world, it is a convention. You are the convention team getting ready to put the convention on in an incredibly haunted and possessed hotel.
That's great. So it's like Scooby-Doo meets setting up the convention.
Yes, and it is based deeply on real-life experiences. You don't have to have any real experience running events, but I promise that lots of real life experiences will intrude into the story. Not in the sense of my saying, no, that's not how it happened in real life, that won't work, but more along the lines of, okay, I love the direction this is taken. This is actually less weird than what actually happened. Let me tell you what happened in this situation in real life. And it's going to have some really cool meta conversation around the actual story as well.
So Dal Johnson is asking, what is Glimmerdark?
Glimmerdark is a misfit fairy festival. Glimmerdark was based on this idea. All of my events really are kind of based on the idea that you don't have to have a separation between the guests, the performers, the programming, and the attendees. It's not they're up on stage, you're down here, and never the twain shall meet. It's always people mixing together. Pretty much every fairy festival I've ever been to said, we are fairies, come into our enchanted land, O mortals, and experience our place as a visitor. And we said, what would happen if a bunch of misfit fairies decided to leave fairyland, rent a huge hotel in New Jersey, and throw a party? And the answer is Glimmerdark.
Nice. And are you local? I guess you are in New Jersey because all your events are in New Jersey.
I'm in lovely Hackensack, New Jersey, and most of our events are in New Jersey. Blackthorn is about, an hour and 45 minutes north of here in East Durham, New York. And the Geeky Kink event in New England is in Hartford, Connecticut. But yes, I live in lovely Hackensack, New Jersey.
Yeah, and me and Ted are both down in South Jersey, just like he's probably like 15 minutes outside of Philadelphia, and I'm, maybe 20, 30 minutes.
Oh, wow. So Steampunk the Catskills is like a 3-hour drive for you. That's not bad at all. Yeah. I'm reversing my stand. You should totally go.
Totally local. Yeah. That weekend's tough. But I am looking at November now. So for the Geeky Kink, I might drag my wife to that and check that out. We'll see.
Well, I won't tell Ted.
That's all right. He's been horrified enough over the years. So being my brother-in-law is not easy for him. He deserves some kind of trophy or medal or something.
Would being your brother-in-law be easy for anybody? I'm just curious here.
No, probably not. But what are you going to do? I am who I am.
That is, yes.
So.
And so you are. And keep having me on the show, please.
Oh, absolutely. You got an open invitation to come back, especially when you have things coming up or if you have something specific. So do you do any other gaming?
I've loved lots of kinds of gaming. I tend not to have a lot of time for social activities that my partners are not involved in. So, for example, I go to shows with my husband, Chip, or my girlfriend, Holly. Same with events, same with movies. I don't even tend to consume media by myself except books. Like, I don't watch movies or television shows except with partners. I just don't have time. Most of my gaming, I'm trying to learn how to play Go right now. I've lost my first 5,000 games on a 5x5 board. Now I can usually beat a not very good computer at Go on a 5 square board, about 1-to-1 ratio. So I'm starting a 6 square board where I win about once every 30 games. Outside of that, other gaming, it's mostly Storium. Chip, my husband, loves Storium, and he got me hooked on it. And Storium's also a really cool world for a writer, and so I found that to be really fulfilling. I keep wanting to do a one-shot paranoia game or something like that. Occasionally I'll play a little bit of Magic the Gathering. I play some Arkham Horror when I can.
When you have a free 12 hours to spare?
For my bachelor party, we went to a tiki bar, we ordered a bunch of food and drink that was on fire, and we played Arkham Horror. That was my bachelor party.
Nice.
It was great.
Yeah, I totally get it. People who are doing stuff really have a lot of time to socialize and do other things. Fortunately for me, once I got rid of that pesky day job, it opened up some space. But I tend to fill it with even more Nerdarchy. Storium, I'm vaguely aware of it. It's on the peripheral of my consciousness, but I have not checked it out yet. I'll have to give it a look for sure. Oh, we got Australia chiming in now.
Welcome, Australia.
And Professor Bell is one of our writers from Comic Book University. He has a YouTube channel all about, well, comic books, is breaking his balls because he's not from Sweden. So that is like one of the coolest things about doing this is like seeing the people from all over the place and getting to interact with them. And one of the things I did when I went full time is, I guess Wizards of the Coast announced D&D Beyond, which is like a digital tool suite. So I was like, we should probably do something about that. So let's do a live chat. And then I was like, you know what? If I'm not going back to work, I might as well do these live chats. Then I decided it would be really lame and boring if it was just me on here talking. So I'm like, there's lots of cool people out there. Maybe I can get some of them to come on and talk to me. And surprisingly, it worked.
That's how ideas evolve. It's pretty great.
So, yeah.
I am a part of one more event as of 3 hours ago than I was planning. I'm actually, it's just ideas evolve, and some ideas get so cool or so much fun you can't help but follow up. Like one of my favorite bands in the world, a Halo called Fred, who performs at a lot of our shows and is the world's greatest band to use Tupperware for percussion. Of all the bands that use Tupperware for percussion, I think they're the best. They're actually putting on something called the Freaky Mutant Weirdo Variety Show, and they're going to be putting that on at Roxy and Duke's, not terribly far from you, in Dunellen, New Jersey.
Delran?
What's that? Oh, Dunellen.
Dunellen?
Dunellen. It's near Bound Brook.
Okay.
Okay, it's not super close, but it's not that far from you. It's not far from Rutgers.
No. It's probably like an hour and a half.
It's
not bad at all.
On music and performance venue, and their idea was that they wanted to do a show that combined musicians and people who had visual entertainment, so that there'd always be musicians on, and there'd always be visual entertainment, whether it was dancing or a sideshow act or mime or video, other kinds of visual. And the two wouldn't necessarily be things you'd see together at the same time. They might not even necessarily pre-rehearse all of it, so a lot of it would be happening live. You'd see a tremendous variety of stuff, and they're looking to do it as a charity event. And they asked me if I might want to perform. Did a phone call with Adam from a Halo called Fred earlier today, and he actually invited me to help tell people about the show, and I'm really excited. So
now you're telling people about the show.
So now I'm telling people about the show, and I'll get out some more, and I'll see more bands, and I'll see more performers because I'm doing another show. And
nice.
I find that my work pretty much leads me into meeting wonderful people and doing cool things. It doesn't lead me into having a lot of time to sit down with someone and have a drink, but one of my goals for the Steampunk World's Fair is to be able to be on a first-name basis in both directions with as many people as possible. So I will look at thousands of pictures from the Steampunk World's Fair, and if I can't identify at least 2 or 3 people in each photo, I feel like I'm not doing my job. I want to know who attends my events, and I want to meet them, and I want to know what they like. I want to know what they do. I want to know if they've had a good time. I want to know how to show them a better time. And I'm not hands-on in the sense of a lot of event promoters are very hands-on for things like they collect all the vendor money, or they're really hands-on about exactly which performers get accepted. And we have a specialist, we have a vendor coordinator who specializes in the vendors. We have an artistic director who specializes in the artistic and creative side. And I kind of specialize in meeting all the people, trying to find out what makes them happy and trying to make them happier. That's kind of my job. Yeah.
So how many events are you doing now?
In terms of major events, it's probably just the 5. It's just the Steampunk World's Fair, Glimmerdark, Dark Side of the Con, the Geeky Kink event, and Geeky Kink New England. The smallest of those is Geeky Kink New England at about 600. The biggest is the Steampunk World's Fair at about 7,500. in the middle, you get Glimmerdark, which was around 2000 in its first year, which is really exciting to us. And then we have... Oh, go on, please.
No, that's pretty cool. But so, what about the small stuff too? Not necessarily naming it all. I'm just curious to how much you're actually doing, and I'm sure even the small stuff is still probably really cool. You know, judging from everything else you've mentioned, and just having the conversation with you here today.
I do my best. I mean, there's Steampunk in the Catskills, Halloween in the Catskills. Those are some really fun things. Sometimes I'll do my own performances or be part of a larger show. I'm going to be part of the Enchanted City Festival, actually, which I'm really looking forward to. Honestly, right now, we're not doing a whole lot of other shows. That really covers a lot of what we do. But you never know. You know, I was doing something in New York called the Anachronism, which was a steampunk event in New York City. But honestly, the people who are doing steampunk in New York City, Shenli and Dead Vice and Gemini and Scorpio, they're doing such cool things with it that I decided they didn't need a guy from New Jersey coming in once in a while and pulling a piece of their market away. Because there's only a limited market share for any event, and sometimes if you bring an event to a place, you might be taking stuff away from people who need that market to live by. And I live on kind of an entire East Coast market, but New York City is its own little microcosm. And of course, I'm a sponsor of Dragon Thrones, which is an immersive medieval LARP and fantasy gaming experience. And that's looking really fantastic. It's happening at this massive castle area at Bryn Mawr, and that's in July 7th through 9th. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. And they meld basically live-action role-play, board gaming, and interactive theater for what they call social and strategic adventures for everyone. I think it's going to be one of the more interesting immersive experiences in the universe, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. I cannot take credit for any of the planning or the cool gaming or the theater parts, but I can take credit for helping tell people about it, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully participating and being a part of the actual event.
The more you talk, the more you bring up cool things. So that is actually awesome. Like, you just have so much going on. It's pretty amazing. Sounds like a fun life.
It's definitely a really full life. I really enjoy creating things, and I enjoy being a part of creative things. And honestly, at this point in my career, I spend a lot of my time turning down people who ask me to do things, because I'm fortunate to be asked to partner with a whole bunch of people, and I've gotten a lot more selective about it, a lot more careful about it. And so something will just eventually get through my defenses and get on my radar, and I'll be like, oh, I have to do this. And that's fun.
Nice. So with that, we're just about past an hour, so I want to wrap things up. I really do appreciate you coming out. I appreciate everyone hanging out with us. And guys, this Saturday we got a huge announcement that kind of popped up and dropped in Nerdarchy's lap as of Monday. So something cool is in the works, and I think you guys are going to want to know about it. We're super excited. I hope you guys will be excited about it as well. And until next time, guys, stay nerdy.